let's take a look at what's going on in the fixed income space this week. Now, trading in the secondary T-bills market started the week relatively flat across all tenors, though some instruments recorded some interest, namely, of course, the 101 day to maturity, 16th May 2013, which shed 29 basis points in yields to 11.74. Now, the bond market, on the other hand, was relatively active with yields lower, an average 5 basis points across all tenors. Now, joining me from UBA to discuss this is Kubi Momoh. She's the head of market risk at UBA Bank. Kubi, great to have you on the show. I'm sure you are as excited as I am with the game going on.
We certainly are. We just scored a goal a couple of minutes ago, I learned, so we're certainly in a very good mood.
Yes. Well, let's talk about what's going on in the fixed income markets. We'll get back to the game later. Now, okay. T-bills started the week off relatively flat. What's happening today? How was trading in the T-bill market like today?
Well, trading was a bit flat earlier in the day, but you know, Uche, today there was a primary auction, the first primary auction for February, and as we expected, yields have gone down across the board. 3 tenors, 1 offer. We've seen yields move from just slightly above 11% at the last auction to 10.6, 10.4, 10.5 and 10.36 or so for the 91 days. So everything now is sub 11%, and we think that the declining trend is going to continue.
Right, and what's the picture in the bond market, Kubi? Suddenly we're hearing yields are coming down. Is this the case today?
It certainly is. Well, pretty flat. I think people were waiting. There are 2 things happening. 1, people are watching the results of the primary auction, and then 2, there's also a bond auction next week, and we have seen the way we've seen yields going down. We think it's going to continue. Even if the OMO mop-ups, there are some interventions by the central bank mopping up liquidity by issuing shorter tenured bills at slightly higher yields. But even if that continues, the fact that we have a differential of almost 300 billion in maturities at the primary market is going to push a lot of liquidity into the market.
Right, and Sally, what's your outlook for the rest of the week when we look at the T-bill and bond market? Do you see yields to continue to trend down? Do you see a continued flat T-bill market?
Definitely so, especially if the secondary market is taking a cue from what has happened at the primary market. We see yields tending down. In fact, what we're thinking now is that if nothing significant happens with the amount of maturities we have in February, we're looking at single digits, maybe later in the month, maybe early March, but with the trend we're seeing, it's certainly looking that way, the highest single digits.
Well, Kubi, I'd love to get your take on the IFC bond. We're hearing they're on a roadshow currently, and they're certainly planning to issue that Niger bond, 12 billion naira at 10.2%. What is your take on the response we're going to see for this bond?
Well, they're not particularly. I think the IFC bond isn't that big, so in terms of its impact on the market will be minimal. Right. Will there be a take-up on it? Yes, there will. It's still double-digit because, like I said, for sovereign yields are beginning to look like they're going to single digits. This is an excellent time for anybody to be bringing a bond into the market. The IFC bond is small. Even if just a few banks take it up, it will be fully subscribed.
And let's quickly check in, Kubi, on what's going on with the currency. Suddenly we're seeing for the demand for the dollar suddenly impacting the naira at the beginning of the week. We're still seeing the naira sort of weakening against the dollar, 157.35 today, down about 20 kobo. What is your outlook for our currency this week? Continued demand for the dollar, pulling down, weakening our currency?
Well, what happened? I think the market was expecting some inflows because generally we have these periodic oil inflows from the oil majors. So the market expectation was that there will be some inflows by now this week. That didn't happen, so there was a little bit of weakness seen just about the close of trading. Naira went to maybe 157.3545. 20 kobo down on where it was at the beginning of the week. It's been consistent at about 157.154 for maybe the past 8 or 10 trading days. So we think that when those inflows come through, it will probably strengthen a little bit again.
Towards the end of the week. Well, thank you so much, Kubi. But very quickly, I mean, I'd love to get your take on what's going on over at the NSC with the market makers introduced on the NSC floor. What are your thoughts on this? And I'd love to get your take on how you're going to see it impacting activity in our fixed income markets going forward.
Well, it looks like the first couple of days were very slow, very, very quiet, maybe just a couple of testing trades or something. I think the interest there has to be some kind of awareness, a bit more awareness around it, that look, this is something that that the retail investors can do, because right now the interest isn't there. There isn't that much awareness the way there is for the normal equity market, but and this would be a good time to enter for a retail investor just before yields go even low. I think this is a good time to play in that market, but we need a bit more awareness. We need to be sure that there's liquidity and that the market makers have sufficient funding to keep the volumes moving.
Right, and certainly there's still a lot of interest in our fixed income market. But what kind of flows do you think we're going to see when it comes to our fixed income market now that we're seeing, you know, another platform opening up for the fixed income trading in Nigeria?
Well, this platform, it's kind of geared towards a different market. The retail, even in the equity market, the retail investors tend not to drive the volumes that much. The real volumes come from the institutional investors. They make markets, they take profit, they're very actively trading. On the retail level, the level of trading tends to be much smaller. The holding period tends to be longer and the turnover tends to be less. So it remains to see how that will work out. We need some institutional interest in the fixed income, with the fixed income market makers, for us to see some depth in that market going forward.
Right, very interesting, Kubi. We'll certainly be following that. And I'd just love to get your take on the game quickly, Kubi. Certainly, I didn't think Nigeria was going to perform this well. First half, we're already seeing 3-0. What's your take on this whole Nigeria-Mali game?
Very exciting. You know, your first half, your first few minutes tends to define your game. Nigeria is definitely having, I hope the football commentators will forgive me here, but we're definitely having a good game, that's for sure. We've come into the match very strong, very accurate passes. We're 3 goals up at half-time, and with this trajectory, we'll be 6-0 at full-time. But no, seriously though, I think we'll go through to the next round.